Hey, what's up, OV Tribe? Thanks for joining us today. Today, we are just about to start on a hike down through some narrows, some water, some different terrain for maybe what you've hiked. But we wanted to tackle a question that we've heard a lot, which is, do you hike in sandals? Do you hike in Trailrunners? Do you hike in hiking boots? Right now, we've got Derek over here in sandals, we've got Brigham in Trailrunners, and I'm wearing hiking boots. We're gonna get wet, we're gonna be hiking on trails. We're gonna be going through a whole variety of terrain. So we'll just dive into this hike and we'll kind of keep you posted on our thoughts as we go.
All right, so where we parked the car is right on the top of this big hill. There's not really a trail to get down to the riverbed. Following the riverbed is where this trail actually starts. We're gonna head up this canyon, but getting down is the problem. And I will say that my sandals aren't really ideal for that first part I just did. I did make it down. There's a lot of big boulders, a lot of brush, really steep hill, and slipping all over the place. But I think where my sandals are really gonna be helpful is where we're crossing the river multiple times. We're in and out of the water. Getting stuck in there, Jason?
Well, we've avoided the water as long as we can. I think it's time to commit to getting my boots wet.
All right, so we're just getting to the narrow part of the canyon. So far, I'm really happy with my sandals because we've crossed the river a ton of times. And so it's been really nice just to have sandals that don't trap any water in or anything. And as we're going on land, they're comfortable. These are actually Chivas, they're hiking sandals, so they're comfortable for me. One thing to know about hiking or backpacking in a slot canyon or in a narrow canyon like this is you've really got to plan ahead to stay safe. Flash floods can happen at any time, especially if you're not really paying attention to where the water is coming from. So not only do you have to check weather of the area you're going to be hiking in, but check where the water comes from that's in that canyon and make sure any area upstream also has nice weather. Otherwise, that flash flood could still come from miles away and you'd be in real trouble.
All right, so we've made it to camp tonight. We've hiked 3-4 miles up and in here through water. We've been crossing water consistently, walking through a little sand, mud, etc. And we just wanted to tune in and talk a little bit about some of the pros and cons about each of our foot pieces. For starters, let's go ahead and talk about the sandals. How have you liked the sandals so far, Derek?
I've actually really loved the sandals. We've crossed the river a ton of times to get to camp, and I've liked not having to worry about walking through water. These guys at first with their shoes and their boots, they were trying to avoid the water at first, and then I kind of just plowed right through wherever I wanted to, and that was nice. I don't really like having wet socks and wet shoes and lugging around those on my feet when they're kind of heavy and they feel bogged down, so I really like that. The one con I will say was when we first started coming down from the parking lot, there was a really steep incline. No trail, lots of boulders and loose dirt, and that was a little bit of a fiasco in sandals, just kind of slipping around. But other than that, I've really liked using these sandals.
Yeah, so to kind of chime in on that, some of the reasons that I have chose not to use sandals, or my fears I will say, is I've got pretty tender feet, and so I have fears that like rocks are going to get inside the sandal, between my foot and the sandal, and that'll be annoying. I'd have to stop and get those out. I'd be fearful that my foot would slide to the sides of the sandal, and as I'm walking through these slippery bottom rocks, that my foot might slide and kind of hit those or whatnot. Did you have any issues like that with your sandals?
No, I actually didn't. Sometimes when I've used sandals before, you do sometimes get like dirt or rocks a little bit inside your sandals, but on this trip I haven't. There's enough water that I think that it just washed everything right through. If anything got underneath my foot.
That's been cleaned out pretty good. So Brigham, he's in Trailrunners. How have the Trailrunners been for you?
They're pretty good. On the Trailrunner scale, they're probably a more burly trail runner. They're a Solomon, but they're very stable for what we're doing. I don't like my feet getting wet and having wet clothing or wet socks either, but I really like having my feet locked in, and so it's a trade-off that so far on this trip I'm okay with. I brought an extra pair of socks to sleep in because I have no expectation that these are going to dry out tonight, and that's fine. And that my shoes will still be wet in the morning, that's fine too, because we're just going to be walking right back down the creek, for a couple hours. So, but yeah, I like the stability and the grip, and it only takes a few steps after getting out of the water for basically pressure of my foot to kind of push probably 80 or 90% of the water out, so I'm not lugging around a ton of weight. But it's definitely I was thinking about it earlier on the way up. It feels like back when I was in high school, there was no turf fields. It was all just long grass, and so it felt like football practice on a rainy day in like leather cleats that you're just soaked, so you just play on. But this is actually a lot more comfortable than the cleats. But yeah, so it's not bad. I kind of why don't I wear sandals? Because first of all, I don't own any sandals, but I could see on this trip I would be tempted to use them. I think I would probably be fine with them, and there's definitely some pros to it, but I would miss the stability and having my foot locked in, but I would appreciate like just the not having wet socks at the end of the day. So
yeah, and I think to build on that, so I'm using boots, and the first thing I want to mention with that is I would not recommend using any boots with like a Gore-Tex liner, a waterproof liner in them, event, whatever it is, because the second you go into the water, they're gonna fill up and they won't drain. So I'm using it's a Moab ventilator. It's an old pair of boots that I have that I only wear for this type of stuff now. But just like he was saying, you take those first few steps out of the water, especially with boots, it's even worse. You actually feel the weight on your foot, and then a couple steps in, you're draining, and then you're about back to normal, or at least what normal is now that your shoe's wet. So whatever it is, I don't recommend Gore-Tex. But the reason that I go with these, I guess there's two reasons. The first thing is when you're walking through water like that, especially dirty water, you can't always see the bottom. There's a lot of round rocks under there. I like having the ankle support. You probably saw I was using trekking poles as well. But between trekking poles and having a little bit of ankle support, I'm less worried I'm just gonna like twist my ankle as I'm walking across these round, slippery rocks all the time. The other reason that I'm using these particular ones is they are just an old pair, and when you're walking through water and stepping on stuff you can't see and rolling around, I kind of like taking the wear and tear of all of that abuse on an older pair of boots that they're already worn out. I don't use them for anything else because of that, but they work great for this particular application. So just kind of know you're probably going to put some significant wear on shoes and boots when you do go through water and kind of do crossings like that. But that's why I choose to use boots. I mean, I have Trailrunners. I don't have sandals, particularly because I'm worried about my feet getting little rocks and debris in there, and they're all sensitive. But the Trailrunners I could see me using with fear of trying to be careful with ankle support, but with these it just gives me a little bit more confidence. So anything else to add? I don't think any of us would have said yet that we would switch. We may see as we hike out of here tomorrow and do some more hiking. Maybe some of us will end the trip and say, I wish we had sandals, I wish we had switched up. But I think right now we're all pretty happy with our choices, and hopefully you hearing about the different choices and why we've made them might help clear things up for you and your particular foot. So I think for now we'll close it down. We'll camp in here tonight. We'll hike out, and we'll let you know if we decide that we may want to switch things up for future trips and why we might do that. right, so we're just about to the truck. We just got to scramble up this hill behind us. We just wanted to quickly check in and see if any of us would change the shoes that we took. Brigham?
Probably not. I think they worked well for me. They were, like I said earlier, they were supportive and protective and kind of locked my feet in pretty well. So I am interested in having a pair of sandals for maybe shorter duration stuff, or basically I could see the value in sandals, but for this trip I'm glad I used what I did.
And just to build on that, this trip we probably covered, I don't know, 8 miles up and back. We did a little side canyon, but it's slow going miles. It's taken us a few hours each way for sure. So yeah, it is a significant amount of distance and time in the sandals. Derek?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely glad I had the sandals. Like I said, my personal preference, I don't like dealing with wet socks and shoes, and so having the sandals, being able to cross the river as many times as I want for convenience. Maybe to me some of the river crossings looked easier to walk on than some of the shorelines with all the boulders around, so having sandals, maybe not even have to think twice about just getting right in the water, where I felt it was easier to walk in a lot of places, and really I just enjoyed having them on this trip.
Yeah, walking in the bottoms like this, you definitely get a nice ankle workout. There's lots of round, slippery rocks and whatnot. I still liked having that extra ankle support, but if you have stronger ankles, I could definitely see just running Trailrunners. If you've got Trailrunners, they're more likely to not be membraned or waterproof membraned or Gore-Tex. So that would be something just to look for. I'm kind of with Brigham on the sandals. I could see a use for them, maybe trying them for shorter duration, more playful stuff, but when it comes to like serious backpacking, putting down the miles, I'm sticking with Trailrunners and boots. So hopefully this is helpful for you guys. There's definitely personal preference in here for sure, and trip preferences, but hopefully this gives you some pros and cons of each setup for when you head out on the trail.